Hey guys, this is Dawood with AutoMarketplace. Thanks for joining us today. So we wanted to get this out as soon as possible because I know a lot of our readers and listeners are um, very eager to know the results of the auction that occurred today. So just as a quick reminder, there's an auction held today by Maltz Auctions. Originally, there were supposed to be 10 tax medallions that the bidding was going to start that were effectively controlled by Marblegate. The bidding was going to start at 150,000, and the valuation expectations at the time from people we spoke about were about 200,000. Okay, so what happened? Long story short, 7, not 10, I guess 3 got pulled, were sold for about 175,000, with Marblegate itself potentially purchasing a few and then a few private transactions. But recent cash transactions tell a different story. So we want to contextualize the auction with our weeks of research, actually, about what's going on in the taxi medallion market. We wanted to share it all together. So that's the result of the taxi medallion. Long story short, but it's very important that if you want to really understand what's going on in the taxi medallion industry, just to listen to this, we'll try to keep it as short as possible and as simple as possible, although there are some complexities. Um, and also explain, like, what do you mean Marblegate? I think some people will be like, what do you mean Marblegate bought their own medallions? So we'll explain what we mean by that, or what we think happened. Okay, so based on our discussion with several parties, and we, our network, our information network, is some of the most trustable brokers and industry participants in this market. So when we, if other details come out, we'll correct the record, but we're only publishing this after talking to very trustable people who themselves were in the auction. So this is like direct information. Um, so based on our discussion with several parties who had direct knowledge of the auction, we believe that 7, down from the original market 10 NYC tax medallions, were sold for 175,000. Interestingly, Marblegate itself may have purchased a few, with the rest going to private individuals who may have also gotten financing. Now, so what do we mean that Marblegate itself may have purchased the medallion? So what we mean, and we'll go back, we'll do that in a second half, but basically Marblegate might actually own the loans that are being foreclosed upon, and so they can credit bid their own collateral, meaning that it's not too dissimilar from a bank foreclosing on someone if they defaulted on their house payment. And so they might have like a bottom, like if no offers meet their threshold because they think the house is worth more, they'll either cancel the bidding, or they might just bid on themselves to enforce their collateral and then take it from there, if that makes sense. And we'll describe that in more detail. And obviously, if you have questions about what we're saying, leave comments and questions in the Substack or the YouTube video below. So in other words, Marblegate is the current lender of the foreclosed medallion, negotiated a city loan guarantee of 170,000, which kind of explains that 175,000 number, and we'll explain that in the second half of this video. We'll try to do this as quick as possible, but try to listen to the details around that, because I think it's really interesting if you really want to understand the taxi medallion market. So, okay, 175,000. The private parties probably got financing, maybe from Marblegate itself, maybe from other people. And what we mean by financing is it could have looked something like this. So they could have bought it for 176,000. They might have had $17,500 down. And why we think that's interesting is there's not a lot of lenders in the industry. And so right now, the current 24/7 lease rates on tax medallions are between 900 and 1100, based on talking to multiple people. Let's say you strip 300 from that weekly rate. Just say, you have a driver-owned vehicle and you're trying to determine like what the medallion lease rate is only. Like medallion only lease rate, I should say. It's a driver-owned vehicle, DOV. And so it's 600 a week. This is all illustrative. It's not investment advice, by the way, but this is just illustrative math. 600 a week, 31,000 a year, so it's like 2,600. So if you can get this finance, if someone lender is willing to do this for you, that'd be your monthly payments. If you have a 20-year amort with a 5-year balloon payment, that was what we discussed in another video. That's our understanding that was on the table. So you can kind of you can kind of have this for 1,500 a month or pay the monthly lease. So for people, this is not for investors. For drivers who are leasing their own medallion, one could actually legitimately argue, and this is not investment advice, that if you can get the financing, like, you might as well buy your own medallion. But that might have, so if Marblegate bought like 3 of the 7, I don't know how many they bought or if they did buy it, but it seems like they did. Let's say they bought 3 of the 7 and the other 4 were done at a similar price. They may have gotten financing from Marblegate itself or another lender, and that would be that. So, okay, so what is an NYC tax medallion worth right now? So long story short, excuse me, I'm just clearing my throat. Long story short, there's basically it's a tale of two markets right now in the medallion industry. There's an all cash market, so that's someone with 100% cash, and then there's a finance market, like we just spoke about, where some sellers are willing to accept a 10 or 30% down payment, but they want a higher price, obviously, if they're willing to finance you. And so the all cash market right now, from our understanding, talking to multiple brokers over multiple months, to tell you the truth, and this is based on actual transactions, is between 110 and 130,000. That's like the cash transaction. So like a driver with that amount of cash is coming in, and they can get a medallion, obviously depending on the type of medallion, whether it's unrestricted, restricted, wheelchair accessible, alternative fuel. So the cash market is 110 to 130. Obviously this is it can change. It goes without saying, but that's what the current market seems to be. The finance market valuation is between 150 and 180. So this valuation is closer to like a finance market valuation rather than a cash market valuation. And so, in our opinion, it says, in other words, and we spoke about this before, we have a classic inefficient private market that one needs more institutional capital. So lenders need to come to this market. If nobody's willing to lend, you're going to get this huge differential between cash buyers and people who need financing. And also, a lot of drivers don't have like $100,000. So most of them, if they're interested in buying a medallion, they need like financing for it. So that needs to come back. And two, the need for the regulator, the TLC, to provide more confidence that the taxi medallion market will be sufficiently protected, limit on the issuance of new TLC plates. So this is where I hope all of our content for our readers and for those who follow us are beginning to connect the two dots. The difference between a TLC plate and a taxi medallion, it's merging now. It's becoming kind of one and the same things. Yes, a taxi medallion can do a street hail, but the vast majority of the market now is basically e-hails, prearranged, however you want to decipher that. So to issue a new TLC plate and not like auction it, also good. It's a good city mechanism to balance the budget, by the way. Um, that's why people in the medallion market, just for the guys out there who, I understand the frustration with abusive leasing companies, and there's ways that we talked about before to protect against that, from lease caps to reissuing handed in plates in a in a manner that doesn't overly inflate the supply of for hire vehicles, so supply demand are in balance. But that's why the taxi medallion industry is so uh, um, upset when new TLC plates issued, because it's, to them, it's almost like, why are you giving a taxi medallion away for free? That's how they view it, and I kind of understand that, to tell you the truth. So we believe the taxi medallion industry faces a medium to long road to recovery, but at the very least, there seems to be light at the end of the proverbial tunnel. Below, share this video recapping our thoughts on the auction and providing more context. So that was the auction. And then the second part of the video, again, we're going to do this try to do it as quickly as possible. It is complex, but I'm going to try to simplify it. If you really want to understand the background to this 175,000 and what I think is going on, I'm going to try to explain what my understanding of it is. Okay. So back in I'm sorry. Back in August 2022, so about a year ago, they finalized this debt restructuring called the MRP Plus program. A lot of people are involved in this. It was a deal years in the making, basically. And so we encourage you to read the article August 31st. We'll put the link in the description. But I'm going to try to simplify how, and this relates to the auction, how Marblegate may own their medallions, or how they acquired the medallion loans that are collateralized by the medallions that they can enforce upon and then effectively own the medallion, if that makes sense. So here's a short summary, or I'm going to make this as short and simple as possible. It can be complex though. Okay, so there was, for example, a credit union called Melrose. It was one of the biggest lenders to the medallion industry. Went bust, obviously, when the medallion was $1 million, and you did a loan for 900,000 based on that valuation. When the medallion falls to 200, 100,000, obviously that's not a good situation. So the credit union goes bust, and then you have a national credit union that kind of overtakes the loan portfolio of the credit union in that instance. And it's not only Melrose, there are obviously other credit unions and other banks, so they overtake this loan portfolio. So as an example, and we try to illustrate this, let's say this medallion was bought at 500,000. By the way, a lot of medallions were bought at like 800, 600,000. But let's use 500,000. Let's say the loan stems from, I don't know, the valuation kind of coincides with maybe 2007 from my memory. Maybe I'm wrong on that. 2010, something like that. 2007 to 2010 era. So let's say in this example, and probably they gave more aggressive lending terms because the medallion was like a asset that was considered better than the S&P, better than gold. It might have been like 50K down, but let's just use this as an example. This is all illustrative. This is to reiterate. This is not the exact numbers because I don't know the exact. Obviously every deal has different numbers, and I also don't know the exact numbers, but I have a debt restructuring background, so I kind of understand what may have occurred. So in this hypothetical example, illustrative example, let's say this medallion, a driver acquired it. He has that monthly payment on the $400,000 loan. He put $100,000 down at a 500,000 valuation. Then the credit union goes bankrupt, and let's say this is a balloon loan, so like not a lot of principal got paid off. And so this national credit union takes over the loan and they need to get rid of it. So then no one wants to touch this industry, like very few people. So you have to contextualize that. Marblegate, which is a distressed special situation investor, this is what they do. And by the way, Marblegate's clients are university endowments and pension funds. So you also have to remember that that's who they're making money for. Before you paint them too evil, they're making money for pension funds, teacher pension funds and university endowments. So it's kind of like a complicated argument, to overly demonize them. I think a lot of people are inclined to do that, but you have to remember that they're making money for endowments and pension funds. So in any case, in this instance, Marblegate, the market, no one wants to touch these things. The credit union is like, I'll accept, what's the lowest offer? I just need to get this off my hands so someone else can service these loans. So they say, okay, on this $400,000 loan, if you give us 80,000, i.e. 20 cents on the dollar, it's yours. Again, illustrative, but I think something like that happened. Okay. So now Marblegate owns this loan, but you have to remember they bought the loan from the lender. The borrower still owes 400,000. That obligation doesn't change. They just bought they bought the loan. The borrower's obligation is still 400,000. So that's an important thing to note. So now the pandemic happens, the yellow cab industry is in extreme distress. And so if, let's say there's 3, 4, 5,000 medallion loans outstanding to individual operators, and they're all going to go bankrupt if a restructuring doesn't happen. So it's a big deal. So with the city and Chuck Schumer is part of this, you should get credit. Other politicians were a part of this. David Doe from the TLC saw this through, so they should all get credit for facilitating this deal, because it's pretty complex to facilitate this deal, these type of deals. So what was the deal in this example? So remember, you got to convince Marblegate that why should I write I bought that obligation for that. Like I have every right to enforce on 400,000. What Marblegate said is like, okay, we'll get to the table because we understand the political backdrop to this, that you can't have 3, 4,000, 5,000 drivers defaulting, and that could lead to other stuff, that could lead to chaos. A pandemic is occurring. A debt restructuring needs to occur, and the city needs to step in this instance. So this is what the transaction kind of looked like. And by the way, we'll provide a link to this, the MRP Plus it was called. So they said, Marblegate, if you write down this loan in half. By the way, this loan could have been 600,000 and they wrote it down to that. But let's say 400,000, they basically said, we'll write it down to 200,000. They took a $200,000 loss. Although they bought it for 80,000, they took a 200,000 loss on what they could claim. So technically they bought, if you want to do this sort of math, instead of 20 cents on the dollar, it's more like, 30, the 33 cents on the dollar. I'm doing bad math right now, like high 20% on the dollar, sort of thing. So I'm sorry, what am I saying? It's like 40% on the dollar sort of math. I'm sorry, my brain's not working right now. So instead of 20 cents on the dollar, it's more like 30 or 40 cents on the dollar. But in relation to this, they also got a $30,000 city payment. So what that basically means is Marblegate bought this for 80,000. They get 30K back on the 80,000. And by the way, I'm simplifying this. There's servicing fees, there's other fees, there's other costs associated with this, running a taxi garage. They're also collecting for the performing loans. Like all the loans they bought aren't not performing. Some of them are performing, so they're collecting payments on those. So this is the deal. So cut the debt down from 400 to 200,000. We'll give you a 30,000 payment, and 170 remains. And you, by the way, will, because you agree to this, Marblegate, as part of the deal, we'll give you a city loan guarantee. Now, this is and these are the caps that they negotiate for the drivers, and which is pretty good considering interest rates have gone way up. So that's actually a pretty good deal that city did on the behalf of the drivers. This is key, the city loan guarantee. This is everything, actually, in terms of when you think about the auction. What the city loan guarantee means is that even after this restructuring, if the driver cannot even service that new $170,000 loan, Marblegate, because you did all of this, the city will pay you 170K for the medallion effectively, or on the loan. We guarantee it. So going back to this is why it's 175,000, because the Marblegate has a city loan guarantee of 170,000. At least that's our understanding. So like, that's why it's not reflective of the cash price, but the cash price is also a real price. So that's why it's kind of complicated. So that's the background to how Marblegate may own the loans. This is illustrative. This is not exact numbers. Some of these loans might have been 700,000 and they wrote down to 200,000. Some of them might have been 300,000. So, but this is illustratively how they own this. But this is key, the city loan guarantee. By the way, just on it as a side note, FYI, and I don't know if anybody has an update on this, because I've been trying to get an answer to this. So if you do, please let me know. Technically, when tax medallion debt is forgiven, it a taxable event could be created. So do the drivers owe the tax on the forgiven debt? So like if you had a $500,000 loan and it got written down to $170,000 loan, technically, like a tax obligation may be created. And so to be fair, like New York Taxi Workers Alliance, Metropolitan Taxi Board of Trade saw this. So I don't know what happened to this bill because it was introduced, but I don't know what occurred to it. By the way, this is how a taxi medallion looks. Sometimes people actually don't know how a taxi medallion looks. This is how it looks. Okay. So that's the update for now. We'll obviously talk about this in greater detail in the future and provide more insight. But just to conclude with this, I just want to, when this new TLC plate thing, I hope people are beginning to understand whether it's our content, whether they're digesting what we're saying or what other people are saying. This is why the medallion industry, it's such a emotional issue for that industry, because they're like, every time you issue a new TLC plate, you're diluting the value of our medallion that we paid money for. And so, that's the background of that. Anyways, we'll talk more about this. Obviously, if new information comes available, we'll let you know. None of what we write or say should be taken as financial advice. It goes without saying. And this is based on our high level understanding. And if new information comes out, we'll obviously update the record. But we hope you enjoyed this. We hope this is insightful, and we'll keep you up to date with any new developments. Appreciate it.